The name Al Capone is familiar to almost everyone, especially to those interested in the history of crime. Such people know about Capone's numerous wars with other gangs, when more than a few of the Italian's enemies were killed and he himself survived more than one attempt on his life. And such people have also probably heard about Jack McGurn, one of Capone's best killers, on whose account Alphonse authorized almost all his significant murders. That's who we're going to talk about today. Meet Jack McGurn, on the other side of the law. Before you continue watching, I'd like to ask for your financial support of the channel. At the link in the description, you can find my store-branded merch with exclusive prints designed by me. If you have the opportunity and you like something, please buy it, so you can help the channel to develop. Thank you in advance, and enjoy your viewing! The setting is Chicago, 1921. Jack McGurn, an ambitious lad of 19, is getting closer to his dream of becoming a professional boxer. McGurn went at it for several years, devoting himself to training and taking on a new name. It was a common practice in boxing where athletes of Irish descent were treated more favorably than Italians. But Jack McGurn's roots hail from the Sicilian town of Licata, in the province of Agrigento. It was here on July 2, 1902 that he was born, becoming the eldest son of Tommaso and Giuseppina Garibaldi. He was named Vincenzo, but this name would later be Americanized into Vincent. When McGurn was 4 years old, he boarded a ship called the Gregory Mork with his mother, younger brother Salvatore, and uncle Francesco, beginning his journey to the New World. The family headed for New York City, where McGurn's father was waiting for them. The Gibaldis settled at 14 Union Street in Brooklyn, an apartment building that housed mostly immigrants. When Tommaso struggled to earn money to move to the United States, he believed that great opportunity and security, two things they lacked in their homeland, were awaiting them in their new place. However, moving to Brooklyn, the head of the family realized he was wrong. Immigrated Sicilian gangsters had deployed their criminal activities there, so the future Jack McGurn had to study in two schools at once. The first was a public school in Brooklyn, and the second, the street, with its own law and order. Time went on, and there were new changes in the life of the family. In 1910 and 11, two more children were born, Frank and Angelina. In the same year of 1911, tragedy struck. Tommaso contracted a severe virus and passed away before the new year. After mourning him, Giuseppina, who is now called Josephine, got together with grocer Angelo De Mori in 1912. The man took on the role of her husband and father of her children, and in April 1913, their son Anthony was born. De Mori appears to have found common ground with his eldest stepson and became a close friend to him. When little Vincent began to have problems with street bullies, his stepfather pushed him to learn boxing. The boy liked the sport, and soon he fought wherever he could in the welterweight division. At the same time, he began to work part-time as a caddy, that is, a golf assistant, at the country club, and gradually began to play golf himself, aspiring to the professional level. Beginning in 1918, the Spanish flu started to spread across the U.S., proving to be more devastating than the battles of World War I. The Spanish flu was a pandemic that killed millions of people, and it hit the economy hard in the process. After the Spanish flu outbreak, New York City was in a crisis, and Jack's stepfather decided that his grocery business would fare better in Chicago. Josephine agreed, and the family moved to the Sicilian enclave of Little Italy in the Cheese West Side. After Jack's first Christmas in their new home, an event occurred that prefigured many of the boys' lives who went down in history as criminals. On January 17, 1920, the Volstead Act went into effect, prohibiting the sale and consumption of alcohol. It was the era of bootlegging. But Jack McGurn was then still determined to become a successful boxer. On October 1, 1921, he had his first professional 6-round bout with Jimmy Ford. Jack emerged victorious, and it was there that he first came to the attention of the Chicago outfit. It's believed that he was spotted by Johnny Torrio, who was at that fight along with Al Capone. On November 4th of that year, McGurn won another fight. His third and fourth outings in the ring ended in a draw. On June 24, 1922, McGurn lost for the first time to Bud Cristiano. Although things were not going well in boxing, McGurn had not yet given up hope of making a name for himself in the sport. Even then, he still joined a criminal organization because of his need for money. However, not yet to the Torrio Capone syndicate. Thanks to crime, McGurn began to earn good money. Enough even to buy a car. His stepfather De Mori's businesses also showed promise, which in addition to the food business, he was involved in the sale of illegal alcohol. The latter brought good profits, and De Mori began to expand the number of his suppliers. This was not the best solution, because his first suppliers, the Genna brothers, were not going to share their territory with others. On the brothers' orders, on January 8, 1923, two gangsters shot and killed Angelo De Mori while he was on his way to work. It was a great loss to the Garibaldi family. McGurn was angry at his stepfather's killers and was not going to let them go unpunished. 3 years later, now a hitman for the Chicago mob, he tracked down the culprits and personally killed each one. In the palms of the breathless victims, McGurn put a 5-cent coin. In the future, this would become his signature. On May 21, 1923, McGurn held his last boxing match and forever said goodbye to the ring, leaving dreams of a successful career in the sport. Now Jack McGurn faced new goals: to become an authority in criminal society, to survive, and to remain on top. Making all three happen simultaneously was no easy task. Before joining the Chicago Mafia, McGurn for some time worked with the North Side Gang, their longtime rivals. We don't know much about this period, except that McGurn's stay with the North Side was short and ended with the former boxer being kicked out because of his insubordination. Once McGurn came under Al Capone's wing, things took a turn for the better. His career path in the outfit began in 1926 with the Circus Cafe Gang, associated with the Torrio Capone syndicate, which was led by Claude Maddox. There, he was noticed by Al Capone and made into his bodyguard and enforcer. McGurn quickly gained the trust and favor of his superiors and respect on the street, which was a credit to his fearlessness, loyalty, respectable character, and habit of maintaining his physical fitness. Al Capone liked the latter so much that he made other bodyguards and hitmen follow McGurn's example and attended gyms specially built for them. Although McGurn joined the syndicate in 26, we need to go back a bit to discuss an event that would influence his criminal career. It was the murder of Dean O'Banion. O'Banion was the leader of the North Side Gang. As mentioned, this predominantly Irish-American criminal organization was a rival of the Chicago Mafia, and there was a feud between the two from the very beginning. In early 1924, peace was made between the two organizations, but it did not last long. As early as May, the fragile agreement was broken, beginning with the lucrative Seabens Brewery, which Torrio and O'Banion jointly owned. One day, O'Banion offered to buy out his partner's share. Not expecting any tricks, Torrio agreed and paid out $500,000. On May 19th, he realized what O'Banion's plan was when the police raided the brewery. The gangsters in the building were apprehended, and Torrio had to pay $7,500 bail to get his employees released. Angry that he had been set up, Torrio decided to take Dean out. On November 10th, 3 gangsters entered Schofield's flower store owned by O'Banion and shot the owner. This was the start of a 5-year standoff between the North Side Gang and Chicago outfit. On January 24, 1925, new North Side Gang leader Earl Jaime Weiss, along with George Morin, attempted to kill Torrio, but the latter managed to stay alive. After recovering, Torrio handed over control of the syndicate to Capone and left for Italy. On September 20, 1926, Weiss and Morgan organized a large-scale attack on Capone in a hotel, which also turned out to be a failure. Capone got back at Jaime Weiss by putting McGurn on his tail. In October 1926, McGurn shot Weiss with a Thompson submachine gun. A few months earlier in April, McGurn participated in the murder of West Side gangsters O'Donnell, Daugherty, and Thomas Duffy, along with Assistant State Attorney William McSwiggan, whose death was accidental. That same year, McGurn dispatched his stepfather's alleged killers. On March 2nd, he nearly became a victim himself. Capone's enemies tried to shoot McGurn near his home, causing the gangster's first appearance in the newspaper, though under the alias James Gebert. Impressed by the abilities of his new hitman, Capone made small changes in the structure of his organization, and by the end of September 1926, McGurn headed his enforcers. He was convinced of the correctness of his decision soon enough. Under McGurn's leadership, operations became more elaborate and effective, as evidenced by the murder of Weiss. McGurn specifically rented 2 rooms as observation points. After waiting for Weiss, along with his bodyguard, a politician and detective, to appear on the street, McGurn and his assistant opened fire. The operation was executed with precision. The targets, who were Weiss and his bodyguard, were killed, while the men accompanying them were wounded yet survived. Exceptional accuracy in handling weapons, also in time, began a hallmark of McGurn and secured him the nickname Machine Gun Jack. In the summer of 1927, Giuseppe Aiello, the leader of a Chicago mafia family, tried to seize power in the Unione Siciliana, a fraternal organization founded in 1895 as a mutual aid society for Sicilian immigrants in Chicago. The Italian-American National Union controlled most of the Italian vote, and it was a simple side note for mafiosi who vied for influence in the organization. It was rumored that Al Capone, through his connections, had managed to put his partner, Antonio Lombardo, in place as head of the Unione Siciliana, but this did not please Giuseppe Aiello. Aiello set a reward of $25,000 for the murder of Capone and Lombardo, a very rash move. The bounty hunters began to be hunted by McGurn. Between May and September of 1927, he eliminated at least 4 potential killers. Such a flurry of activity was bound to cause problems. On June 6th, after eliminating the first killer, police arrested McGurn for the first time, finding a loaded revolver during their search. On August 2nd, McGurn was released but soon returned to jail, facing kidnapping and murder charges. But at the trial, witnesses either recanted their testimony or magically disappeared. Those willing to become an enemy of Capone's famous strongman were not found in the hall. So the judge had to let McGurn go. In October, he was arrested again, this time for illegal carrying of weapons, but appearances in court were by no means the worst consequence of his work. In 1928, attempts on McGurn's life began to take place. The first occurred on March 7th. McGurn was on Northside property, running an errand for Capone, when he was spotted by a rival gang member. 3 men in a black sedan drove up to McGurn and one of them opened fire. Jack was shot in the right lung and shoulder, but survived. 2 of the assailants are believed to have been brothers Frank and Peter Gusenberg. McGurn ended up in the hospital. As part of a new law strategy against gangsters with no legal source of income, he was charged with vagrancy and disorderly conduct. The media, however, spread the news that Al Capone's man was seriously injured and would die soon, though this was far from the truth. Having quickly recovered, McGurn walked out of the hospital and, with Capone's help, evaded arrest. On April 17th, McGurn again miraculously escaped death at the hands of Northside gangsters James Clark and Billy Davern. A few weeks later, McGurn would get his revenge on them by killing Davern. In 1929, the event that culminated the showdown between the fake Irishman and Capone took place, the Valentine's Day Massacre. Although McGurn's involvement in the murder of 7 members and associates of the Northside Gang is not officially proven, there's no reason to believe that he did participate in the case. On the morning of February 14, 1929, 7 men associated with the Northside Gang were gunned down by 4 gangsters dressed in police uniforms. The killers lined up the unarmed victims against the inside wall of a parking garage and opened fire on them. 2 of the assailants were known to be armed with Thompson submachine guns. Among those killed were Reinhard Schwimmer, John May, Albert Kachalik, Adam Hare, Al Weinshank, and Peter Gusenberg. Peter's brother Frank was still showing signs of life when Chicago police arrived at the scene. The sole survivor was taken to the hospital with 14 bullet wounds. When police tried to question him about what had happened, Frank replied, "I'm not going to tell. For God's sake, take me to the hospital." 3 hours later, he followed the other victims from this side of life to the next. The primary target of the attack is believed to have been Northside leader Bugs Moran, who was lucky not to be in the garage that day. If you think about who benefited from his death, the answer comes immediately. His main rival, Al Capone. The plan of attack was probably drawn up by McGurn, who did not fail to seize his chance for revenge on the Gusenberg brothers after the attempt on his life. Both Capone and McGurn presented evidence of their non-involvement. February 14th, the leader of the Chicago Mafia was in the state of Florida, and McGurn, according to his girlfriend and future wife, Louise Rolfe, spent the day with her. For this, the media dubbed Louise the Blonde Alibi. Although the Northside leader himself had survived, after this event his credibility plummeted greatly, leading to the rise of his rival's influence. For the next decades, Chicago's organized crime was under the control of Capone and his successors. But the price of victory was high. The city was too frightened by what had happened to turn a blind eye, and the police could not stand idly by. Surveillance over the Chicago outfit intensified. On May 17th, Capone was arrested in Philadelphia for illegally carrying a gun. At first, he was given a jail sentence of 90 days, but then a judge decided to extend it to a full year. At this time, Capone's deputy became Frank Nitti, who showed little respect for McGurn. So McGurn decided to temporarily move to Florida with Louise and his half-brother Anthony. But on March 20th, 1930, he was arrested yet again. A team of Chicago mob lawyers secured his release, but on April 1st, McGurn was detained a second time. On April 10th, he and Anthony were transported back to Chicago from Florida. That same month, the chairman of the Chicago Commission published a list of public enemies that included 28 of the city's gangsters. McGurn ranked an honorable 4th on the list. In June, he was charged with illegal possession of a gun, but Jack was released on bail of $10,000. By this time, it was clear that his best days as a gangster were behind him. After the St. Valentine's Day massacre, higher members of the mafia were slow to use him for their own purposes, since he attracted too much attention. When Capone received a prison sentence in May 1932 of 11 years, McGurn had only to distance himself from the mafia and do something else. Jack remembered his longtime passion for golf and decided to make a career as a professional player. In August 1933, under the name Vincent Gabbardi, he took part in the championship held in the village of Olympia Fields, Illinois. But his alias, which had previously been used by a gangster, caught the attention of a Chicago police detective, and on the second day of competition, when McGurn was on the 7th hole, he was informed of his arrest under the Criminal Reputation Act. Undaunted, McGurn politely asked permission to finish his match. The bewildered police officers agreed, but the presence of the lawmen did not help Jack's game, and the round ended poorly. On August 30th, McGurn was found guilty of vagrancy, but he once again secured bail. Nevertheless, an unlucky streak had definitely begun in his life. After the championship incident, his golf career went downhill. Now he could only participate in minor tournaments without any prospects. Desperate, the former gangster began to drink more and more often. Alcohol made him aggressive and out of control, which alarmed people from the Chicago outfit. McGurn knew too much and could bring trouble to the organization. On February 15, 1936, an impoverished and aloof McGurn was bowling in a building at 805 Milwaukee Avenue in Chicago. Suddenly, 3 men with pistols entered the building and, before McGurn could do anything, shot him. Jack died on the spot. A Valentine's Day card with a poem left by the killers was found on the front desk of the bowling club. You've lost your job, you've lost your dough, your jewels and cars and handsome houses, but things could still be worse, you know. At least you haven't lost your trousers. The names of those responsible for McGurn's death remain unknown. They may have been Northside gangsters or men from the Chicago mob. McGurn was buried in Mount Carmel Cemetery in Hillside, Illinois. His half-brother Anthony, who was bent on revenge, was killed on March 2nd of that year. And that was the end of the story for Al Capone's strongman.